Okay, hello, my name is Autumn Brown, and I'm a researcher with Oklahoma State's Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. For our Art, Activism, and Education Oral History Project today, June 21st, 2022, I am meeting with Hank Byrd to discuss his work as an artist in the Tulsa community. So thanks, Hank, for talking with me today. Let's just start with tell me about yourself. Like, where did you grow up? How were you raised? And were arts like a part of your upbringing?
So I was born in Augusta, Georgia. My parents, Lyndon and Henry, were military, Army, and I was born from that. My father's a minister, but actually my that's pretty liberal guy. So I didn't really have a ton of constraints at home. Um, Arts were encouraged, definitely. I think my mom recognized early on that I had a very high aptitude for reading, and so she encouraged, comic books and art and science fiction and all that stuff. So my mom encouraged all that when I was younger. So yeah, very much encouraged until it was time to go to college, and I wanted to be a filmmaker, and my parents were like, you know, my parents grew up in that era where you went to school and you graduated and you went to college and you got one of them good white folk jobs and get married, have kids, and die. And so that was it's kind of the box that they put you in, and no fault of their own. This is how it was. But yeah, they kind of were like, no, I don't know about film school. That's kind of they felt that was kind of an unrealistic thing. So wound up joining the military myself. Did a small stint in college and partied my way into the military. And so I was there 4 years, 90 to 94. Got married, had kids, went back to school later on in life, Kansas State University, while I majored in radio, TV, and film studies and political science. Yeah, I got out, jobs kind of dried up, where we were living at in Kansas. So we moved back to Oklahoma. My mama got sick, moved back to Oklahoma for a while, and been here ever since. Always wanted to be an artist, just never found my way back into it until around, let's say 2008, 2009. I started working on my first short film and put it out, and we won a bunch of awards, and that kind of reaffirmed my drive to be a filmmaker. So I started pursuing it from there, and the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, wow. So what drew you to filmmaking specifically as an art form?
I was always a fan of film, and it wasn't until 1989 I went to go see Tim Burton's Batman, and I was just enthralled with the film. I was just like, I think I went back to the movies a dozen times to see it, on my own. And I would just sit there, and I sat there and watched the credits, and I was like, what is that? What are all these people? What is a gaffer, a best boy, a grip? What is a producer, co-producer? What do they do? So I'm start looking through the encyclopedia, and I was like, I want to do that. I wanted to write. That's what I was always a writer. So I just had this dream. I'm gonna write the next big Hollywood film. They're gonna pay me $1 million, and yeah, that doesn't normally happen. So yeah, I actually became a filmmaker out of necessity though, because it was hard to sell what you call a spec script, and especially as a black filmmaker. I just became a filmmaker out of necessity, and I started just I'm gonna make my own stuff. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna do it. So I got a buddy of mine to direct my first short, and he was experienced, with cameras and everything, and I was technically, I didn't know what I was doing. I knew how to write. I definitely had that, but never knew what I was doing technically, cameras and angles and all. I had no idea what I was doing, but I did it. I directed my own first short film, As We Lay, and it was a black and white film. It mixed poetry and film together. Again, won a bunch of awards for it. And, people are like, you have a really good eye for doing it. Same guy that directed my short, Stephen Jones, one of my good friends, he mentored me into being a photographer. So I found another passion in doing photography. So, we kind of play to our strengths when, things get rough, and things got rough financially. So I started my own company. So I started a photography, videography company, Sentimental Filmworks, and that became my production company later on. So, yeah, I just
wow. I mean, I know about all your short films and your TV series, but I didn't know you had your own production company. How long have you had that company?
We've been around since about 2009.
Wow, you've been around for a while. That's exciting. So what was it like growing up in Augusta, Georgia? I mean, you had this like kind of inclination for the arts, but what else was it like for you growing up? Military child in the South.
Right. I was a nerdy kid. I, was really socially awkward. I spent a lot of time in the house, I had all the experiences other kids had, but, I spent a lot of time to myself and my comic books and my writing and my doodling and, and stuff like that. So I kind of found solace in, in film and TV shows and things like that. So, I had friends, like me, other nerdy friends, and we would, play games, board games and video games and talk about comic books and nerd out over cartoons and anime and all that stuff. So, it was just kind of, I just kind of stayed to myself a lot until, I was in Boy Scouts, I was in Cub Scouts, Weeblo Scouts, and all that stuff. So then I got to high school, and all that ain't cool in high school. So I had to reinvent myself in high school. So played sports, dabbled in some sports when I was in high school, because apparently if you weren't in the South, if you weren't in the band, or if you didn't play no sports, you didn't get no girls. So, I figured I couldn't play an instrument to save my life. So I said I'll dabble in some sports here and there, to get my rep up, But, I found quickly that girls like nerds. A lot of girls did like, not publicly, but a lot of girls like nerds, though, I found. And, women, I found that women like guys with intellect. And my mother found that out too. And so she, cautioned me continuously about them little fast girls you messing with. So, and so I reinvented myself in high school, and I was kind of the socially accepted nerd, because I kind of walked the line, I played little sports, but I still play my video games and, and all that stuff. So
you were the cool nerd.
I guess.
Which I'm like, I don't even like that term nerd, because I mean, we're all like nerdy to some extent.
All of us.
We all have our thing.
All of us. And there's no, and that's the thing, about my show is that, we're talking about black nerds or bLERDS, we were doing that before there was a term for it. And it's such a broad thing. You can't really pick one out of a lineup, all the time. I remember one of the nerdiest guys I know, and if he ever hears this, he'd probably be embarrassed, but his name is Steve-O. And Steve-O stayed in an apartment next to mine when I first moved back to Tulsa. He in and out of prison, sold dope, whatever. That wasn't no mystery or anything. But I remember I went to go see an X-Men movie, and I came home and he was sitting on one of those green transformers and smoking weed or whatever, and he was like, "Hey, what's up, man? Where you come from?" I said, "I just went to the movies." I said, "What you go see?" "I saw X-Men." "Oh man, X-Men? Man, you ever read X-Men volume so-and-so and Magneto did?" I was like, "What?" And he and I sat down and had like maybe a 3-hour conversation on comic book. He knew more comic books than I did, and video games, anime. He was a nerd. He was an uber nerd.
See?
Like me, but you wouldn't know what to look at him. Because he's from the hood, and and everything. And that was the biggest part of me wanting to write the show that I wrote, because I'm like, a lot of nerds that I knew were that way. They were from the hood, what I'm saying? They didn't grow up, being able to even afford comic books most of the time, or video games or the anime and stuff. but they knew it, they loved it, you know, and I was had an affinity to that, and he did too, and we connected on that.
Wow.
You know, him being from a way different path than I, you know, I had both my parents in the house for a period of time. He did, you know, and he grew up rough. You know, he had a lot of rough upbringing, which we talked about as well. But he like me as a kid, he found solace in comic books and anime and video games and stuff like that.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that was awesome. You know, to discover people like that or that are like yourself from different backgrounds, and so that's the thing about nerds in popular culture. You see nerds, and they're caricatures.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They don't really represent who we are.
Yeah.
You know, we date. You know, we get married. We bathe. we you know, we have a life. We work out. You know, but when people they think nerd, they think, you know, something negative or weird or something like that. So.
Well, I'll have to say, for the record, whatever fragrance you have on, it smells so good.
Thank
I've
you.
been getting like a whiff of it.
Thank you.
And I'm like, dang, it smells so good.
We bathe.
But to that end, I mean, I think it's really cool, like you said, that nerds are not like a one size fit all. No. And one thing you mentioned was like, this guy grew up in the hood or whatever. So thinking about like the duality between like what he liked to do, but then the persona he probably has to like put forth in front of people. And so being able to connect with you on that, I'm sure was like a breath of fresh air for him to like kind of take the mask off and be like, yeah, I like anime.
Yes, you know? Yes, and that's what it was. And you know, and because he had a street persona.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? He had the Steve-O street persona, you know. But that night I talked to Steven, you know, the nerd, you know, from North Tulsa, and so I took that and put that into the show. You know, all my characters are me at some point in my life. You know, you have Ty, who's the married guy, who when he got married, you know, he had to put away things. You know, and I've been there. I've been married, and you have a wife and kids, and so you can't have your action figures anymore, and you know your comic books everywhere and all that stuff. You have to put that up, you know, be a man. Charlie's more the free spirit guy. You know, he still collects his comics and all. That's who I am again now. And then you have Warren from the hood. You know, abusive household, bad childhood. You know, kind of hid who he is. As far as a nerd behind machismo and sexual prowess and everything, and but he's an artist, and he loves comic books too. And these other guys are his best friends from school, but he kind of hides who he is. You know, and I've had to do that too. You know, I get to high school and there's girls there now. I can't walk around with my comic book, my X-Men comic books, you know, and think I'm gonna get girls, or you know, they come in my room and I got posable figures everywhere and all that stuff. I had to change and adapt, you know, who I was, or reinvent myself to be accepted. And so I don't do that anymore. So I don't care. But you know, I'm 50 now, so I don't really have to hide behind anything. I am who I am. You know, and I'm okay with it. Yeah.
I think that's great, coming into your own like that and being comfortable in your own skin. Let's just go ahead and jump into bLERDS.
Yes.
Because it's huge. It's huge, right? It's on Tubi.
Mm-hmm.
For the record, bLERDS is on Tubi.
Yes.
I think it's hilarious, honestly. I think it's funny. I think Duke is really hilarious.
Like, Duke is funny.
He's probably one of my favorite. Him and Buddy are probably my favorite characters on the show.
Yes.
But can you just talk to me? I mean, you've talked a little bit about like your filmmaking came out of necessity and like you have experience being Black and a nerd. But can you just talk to me like beginning to end, how you conceived the idea and how it has turned into this show now that's, you guys are currently in production for season 2?
No, 1. We're still on season 1.
Okay, you're in production for season 1, but it's resumed again.
Yeah,
right?
We just started back filming again. We just finished the 3rd episode. So we had to shut down for a year and a half.
Right.
Because of COVID. So we're way behind. Like season 1 should have been done like a year ago. But we had to shut down. I had 4 people in the cast get COVID and back to back. And so I was like, let's just stop, you know, for a while. And so as you saw, like a lot of production shut down, film production, TV shows, we all had to just pump the brakes for a while for the safety of everybody. So we shut down. So we stopped at episode 2. We finished episode 3 a few weeks ago. So that's off to the editors now. And that'll be out soon. And we're getting ready to start back on episode 4, 5, and 6. So it's only 6 episodes in the season.
Yay.
But yeah, I can see bLERDS a long time ago. I wanted it because it's a personal story, like I said, because each one of the characters is me. You know, part of myself is in these characters, part of their upbringing is in my character, you know, is in my life and things like that, experiences and stuff. So, and again, like I said before, I just got tired of seeing people depict Black nerds a certain way. You know, some characters endearing, like Urkel and other ones like that. And Jaleel White did a great job, and I love Urkel and things like that. But that's a caricature, right? Mm-hmm. So, and we tend to see that in popular culture, is these guys sitting around reading comic books, playing video games all day, and not really living life, and not really having relationships, and not really dealing with everyday things. And so I wanted to dispel a lot of that, you know, with the show. And so, yeah, we have 3 guys and who 2 of them worked at a cushy advertising company until their boss is carted out by the feds for fraud, for tax evasion. Yep. And so they find themselves out of a job. And so Charlie, played by Aaron Michael King, decides that, hey, let's dust off this old idea that we had in high school to start a comic book called Subatomic Sam. And Ty, you know, of course, being a married guy, and like, you know, my wife's gonna kill me. I can't do this, you know. Mm-hmm. And it's like, let's do it, man. This is a goal. This is a dream we had, and let's make it happen. But in order to make it happen, they have to get Warren, played by Duke. And Warren is, they've been estranged for a few years. And so they go and enlist his help. He's doing tattoos. He owns his own tattoo parlor, and that's what he does for a living. And they enlist his help, and he begrudgingly decides to help them out, and they start their adventure, creating their comic book company and creating this comic book. And so the comedy comes from, you know, just their interactions. Some are wild, some are fantastical, some is, you know, you're gonna see a little bit of everything in there. And I tried to appeal to comic book readers. You know, a lot of comic book heads caught the beginning of the show, Tulsa, Earth 9999. And so when you talk about comic books, you know, they don't exist on regular Earth. You know, Marvel exists on Earth 616. And so there's another Earth. It doesn't exist on the same Earth, and our Tulsa doesn't exist on the same Earth that we think. So I mean, we got goddesses and all this other crazy stuff that happens in the show. So you're gonna see a little fantastical element added to the show soon, and you know, I can't say what it is yet, but yeah. So so we decided to do that and just make a more semi-grounded story about being a nerd and what that feels like, and you know, just their misadventures trying to make their dream happen. Like all of us, you know, we're trying to make our goals happen out here, and you know, what are we willing to sacrifice and do to make that happen.
And can you kind of just talk, I mean, you have in some ways already, but just the significance of highlighting and putting kind of on this pedestal Black nerds specifically. Like, why is that significant? Because we don't really get talked about. When we talk about nerds, normally that's what you're gonna see is white guys, you know, or you have your token Black guy when you talk about nerds. You know, you look at the movie Revenge of the Nerds, it was all white guys, one Asian guy who was a caricature, and then you had a gay, flamboyant nerd, Black nerd, who was 2 caricatures, you know, a flamboyant gay man and a nerd and a Black nerd as a caricature. They were every character. It was caricatures that you saw, and I think it's more important to, 1, know that we exist, and 2, that we exist differently than what you think we are. Yeah. You know, we're not caricatures. We're people. Yeah. You know, and it's important to know that that's, you know, and I'm the face of this thing, and I'm a person.
You know what I'm saying? I don't walk around stinky, and looking crazy, pocket protectors and glasses and stuff like this. Suspenders. I'm a person. You know what I'm saying? And I wanted to highlight the fact that we're a person and we're underrepresented, and just being underrepresented in popular culture. In many ways, not just Black nerds, just Black folks in general, just being underrepresented in film. Period.
Right.
I wanted to lend my voice to what's going on. Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." And so I said, okay, well, I'll be the change I want to see in film and make my own stuff.
I think that's so dope, and it also makes me think about sometimes as Black people we see these major overarching things that's wrong with the world. I mean, it's easy to see that through our lens, and then we become almost overwhelmed with how do we fix it all, police brutality or homelessness and this, that, and the other. And I think it's really cool that you were able to see a need and to let your passion kind of drive how you're helping the culture, right? You already said you had a passion for arts and filmmaking, and now you're using that passion for arts and filmmaking to fill a hole and a gap in film and in popular culture that serves us in a way that represents us, in a way that's not offensive.
Yeah. Because in each episode, we got a theme in each episode. It's not heavy-handed, but the first episode you're talking about reconnection, Black men connecting with each other, friendships and things like that, and how we connect as Black men, and we talk about their childhood and all that stuff. Second episode, we talk about fatherlessness. Okay, so we have Cody doing a poem about absentee fatherism, and we talk about that in the show. Third episode, we talk about men being F-boys to an extent and being called on it. And so every episode there's a theme that we have woven into the story. And so that's also an important thing for me in art, is just to have something to say with your art about the culture, about Black relationships, Black men, all that stuff, and women and everything. The fifth episode is the girls' night episode, which I can't wait to do. It's a very female-centric episode. It deals with the ladies that are in the show and what they deal with and everything else. That's all I can say about that. But it's going to be hilarious. But yeah, I want to have something to say about us as Black people, and then Tulsa, just to present Tulsa as a character in the show. We're in familiar places: Tisdale Hill, Tasty Freeze, Greenwood. We're in different places where people recognize. It's always great. People send me stuff on IG or whatever, oh man, Tasty Freeze, I haven't been back to Tulsa in 20 years, and that place is still there. I'm yeah, it's called the Freeze now, but it's still, the building's still there. And they're oh my God, I haven't been there forever, and all that. So yeah, people recognize landmarks in Tulsa where we film and stuff. So Tulsa's a character in the show as well.
Seems very intentional as well. One thing you said about art is you feel you should use your voice through art. Can you kind of expand on that? And specifically, I'm thinking about how art is used as a form of protest, but often we don't credit it as much as I feel like we should.
We don't catch it.
Yeah.
We don't catch it. A lot of times we don't catch the messages. And when we did the horror thing that day, I talked about that. And I used to see these things in films, because I'm a genre guy, so that's horror, sci-fi, fantasy films, and I would watch those religiously, and didn't catch it until I got older, when I would see things in film. So you look at a film like Night of the Living Dead, okay? You have a white woman and a Black dude, and the Black dude's the hero of the story, and in the end, a racist mob kills him.
Right.
So who's really the monster?
Yeah.
You have a film like District 9 about a ship full of alien slaves in a hull hovering over Johannesburg, South Africa. And a white guy who has ingrained racist ideology towards this species of alien become one. He gets exposed to something in the ship and starts to become what he hates. So film has always had something to say. Sometimes we didn't catch it, but it always had something to say.
Yeah.
Especially those types of films, you know, so sci-fi, horror, fantasy, they all have had something to say about the world. And if you look close enough, you'll catch it.
Yeah.
You know, and so, but those are the great films. They don't beat you over the head with the themes, but you'll catch them. You know what I mean? And so that's what I try to do with my stuff. I don't want to be preachy or over the top with it, but I'll put some things in there. Hopefully you'll catch. You know,
it's all about like the subtleties in a way. I think right now, like, everything's so polarized that some films do too much with trying to capture the socio-political things that are happening. And I think Candyman is like my example for current day, right? Like, I think the original Candyman encompassed all of like gentrification, white researchers trying to study the Black experience without it being in your face.
It was subtle.
This new one,
over the top.
Yeah.
It was very over the top.
And it missed. I feel like it missed.
It's too much. Because I mean, you come to Candyman to see what Candyman does is kill people. It's right. The killer didn't start to the last 5 minutes of the movie. And I'm like, what are we doing? What is all this overhanded, preachy mess that you're trying to do? It was made well, but it did too much. It goes back to speech class in college. You encode a message into what you're doing, and the audience decodes the message. So Get Out is going to be your perfect example of that. He encoded a whole lot of Black people in that movie. White people like,
right, they missed it.
What? And we were like, aha.
There were multiple things in that movie.
Multiple ahas in it. And it is funny, one of the filmmakers that caught it, white, Quentin Tarantino.
But look at what he makes.
Yeah. But Quentin Tarantino also encodes and decodes messages in his movie too. Even though there's a lot of N-words going on in Django had a lot to say.
Yeah, Django was, I gotta revisit that because that was tough to watch. Like the first time, I think I revisited maybe 6 months ago, and I was like, dang, this movie was pretty deep. But going back to Get Out, I think my favorite part of Get Out was when the Asian man asked about the Black experience in America. And I think that is like such a perfect way to inject this idea of like people of color versus Black people without it being in your face. But as a Black person, you can watch that and be like, that is what we mean with looping us in with people of color. Like,
and the jealousy that of our physical prowess that the people internalize, you know, that we dominate sports, pretty much any sports that we get into. And people internalize that. And like, you know, the guy was telling a story about his dad getting beat by Jesse Owens and all this stuff, you know, and they want to beat us. They want, you know, literally in this movie, but you know.
I think it's great, and I think you're right. Like, now that I'm older and watching these horror films, I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I missed all of these things and just missed how political horror and science fiction are as a genre. And how
Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th was an allegory on sexual promiscuity.
See, and it's just like...
Because all the kids that had sex in Friday the 13th got killed.
They did. It's only the virgin who lived.
Only the virgin lived.
Yeah.
So it was a cautionary tale on sexual promiscuity. And people didn't understand that. At first they were like, huh? Yeah. I said, watch Friday the 13th. Only the virgins make it to the end. Yeah. The kids that are out there in the sleeping bags having sex, boom, out of here.
They're gone. So talk to me about, I mean, this, I could talk about horror all day.
Right.
Talk to me about you went to college, you said hilariously, you partied your way into the military.
Right.
Which branch of the military did you go into?
I was in the Army.
Okay. So then when you came back to filmmaking, what was like your first project?
My first project was a short film called The Take. And so I did that with my friend Steven, who directed it for me. And I wrote it, produced it, cast the actors. And it's about two dirty cops who follow a guy back to a snitch back to a drug house. And they're going to rob him. And so they get a tip. There's some money in there. And so they find a bag with like $500,000. So 2 dirty cops, bag of money, what could go wrong? And so that is about the course of the night, mistrust and of each other, and then some bad things happen, and then
Wow.
So yeah.
Okay. So but you mentioned another one called As We Lay.
As We Lay, that was my directorial debut. So that was with Miko and Ben, who were a couple at the time, and it's about a couple. Well, they're not a couple in the movie. They are cheating on their respective spouses or respective significant others, and they wake up the next morning in a hotel, and everything is inner monologue. They don't speak, and so everything is a poetry piece talking about why they're there, what happened the night before, and everything else, and just the psychology around infidelity and what are you thinking after the act.
Oh my gosh, where can we find this?
It's on Vimeo.
It's on Vimeo?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds really good.
Thank you. Well, people say it is.
So the whole film is just inner monologue?
Inner monologue.
Wow.
They don't open their mouths and say anything in the whole film.
I'm just curious to hear their thoughts.
They're interesting.
What do y'all think?
Yeah, and they're both poets, so they wrote their own pieces. So
wow.
I geared my shooting style around the way they were talking. So we shot it in natural light in a hotel, opened a window, brought in the light, set the camera up, moved it around, shot in black and white. And it's a beautiful film. It's a great film. And debuted it at when it was open, Full Moon on Cherry Street.
Okay.
So packed house. We packed it out. Just standing room only.
That's amazing. How did that make you feel?
It felt great. Yeah, I didn't expect anybody to show up, really. You know what I'm saying? So, and I get to work out on the radio. People start talking about it. We didn't charge anything or whatever for the event. And I showed up, and it was people just lined up everywhere. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of been my experience ever since. Mm-hmm. I sold out Circle Cinema probably about 4 times. Yeah. You
were the filmmaker in Tulsa.
I guess.
You are. Just accept it. So what does art mean to you?
Freedom. It's definitely freedom. I get to just talk about what's in my head and express what I feel about the world through film. Whatever subject I feel like tackling at the time or talking about, I can't. Mm-hmm. I'm so sorry. So I get to talk about just everything. I get to put it all on the paper and just, open myself up. That way, reflect how I see things in the world, or reflect how other people see things. Because I gather stories too. I collect stories. I hear things and they're intriguing to me, and I'll start writing about them. Part of what I do a lot of commission works as far as writing. I do ghostwriting a lot. Some productions I can't even say that I worked on.
Wow.
Yeah, and they pay okay, and and stories come to me, and they're awesome. I just did a script called Little Moscow, which is the craziest story, one of the craziest stories I've ever heard. So it's about a Russian gangster who moved to the United States in 1981 and was working for the Gambino crime family until people in his crew started getting killed. And so they moved him to Miami to set up shop. And so he opened up a club and named it after his favorite movies from the 80s called Porky's. So it was a strip club. And so he was selling drugs and all this other stuff, prostitution, all this stuff out of the club. He met a guy named Juan Almeida, who was a car salesman and sold boats to drug dealers and things like that. So this is like the 90s, early 90s. And they meet another guy, Tony, who was an ex-Cuban spy. And so they all started selling dope together and wound up getting some money to buy a nuclear submarine, a decommissioned nuclear submarine from the Russians, and from the cartel. They wanted to buy it, so they took $6 million of the cartel's money and stole it.
Wow!
And so, and they're all still alive right now.
Oh, wait, this is a true story?
It's a true story. It really happened.
Oh, wow.
And then the feds had what they call Operation Odessa, because once they learned that they're trying to buy a submarine, everybody's antennas went up,
Yeah.
because it's a national security thing. And so these three guys who are crazy stole his money, and they had an adventurous life. And I wrote the script about it, and everything. They're shopping it now, but yeah, just stories come to me like that, and just another one I did that's actually in pre-production now. It's called Blackdom. It's about the first all-black township that was built in New Mexico in the early 1900s. I didn't know nothing about it.
Me neither.
Right, so
I didn't know Black people really lived in New Mexico.
Yes. So what was happening, because we all hear about like the Midwest and the South where they have black towns and stuff like that. But now people would come out to out west and they could get land. I can't remember what act it was. Where they can get land and they had to just true it up. They had to keep it up and stuff like that. So right in Chavez County, right outside of Roswell, these black folks bought a plot. Got a plot of land, built post office, schools, everything on this land. And the land was bad. It had like bad soil and stuff like that. So the town didn't last super long. But these folks moved here, to the ire, of course, of the people in Roswell who were racist and they didn't want them there. But they had oil on the land. And rich people from New York swindled them out of the land and all this stuff. But it's a crazy, interesting story. And I wrote the script about that. Because these guys that moved out there, Frank Boyer was the real guy. They walked from Georgia, hitchhiked and everything else, a horse, everything, all the way out to New Mexico to start this town. And so it was an adventure. Jeez. Yeah, and so it's an adventure story. It's based on a real thing, and I never knew anything about. And so I love researching. I'm a voracious researcher. So when I did the Little Moscow, I started studying, Miami in the 90s and the cocaine cowboy era and all that stuff that was going on during that time, and then studying, Afro-frontierism and all the stuff that was happening in New Mexico and West. Of what we know, people were getting land and building towns.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Like, that seems like it required a good amount of research on both of those projects. So, like, how long does it take you to do the research and then write a script?
So with Blackdom, I did probably about a year's worth of research. I was collecting everything that I could on the subject. One of my frat brothers, he actually did a thesis paper on it. And so he lent that to us to use as well. And he had like a wealth of information that we didn't even know about, like particular people and stuff like that. It was a lady named Mitty Moore. She was a prostitute, and she was Afro-Latina. And she moved to Chavez County before Roswell was even built. And she set up what you call a body district, BAWDY district, where they sold, liquor and women and stuff like that. She was like a madam, and she was rich. Oh. And I guess a lot of her clients were lawyers and people didn't know the law, so they would try to arrest her, and she was too smart for them. She would have money, like your bail is $25. Said, right, $25 is like in my wig. I don't care, She had money. She was smart. She was dangerous. She was a gangster, and she bought a lot of the land where Blackdom would be. So these churchy, religious black folk, they had to deal with her in order to get some of the land, and they kind of didn't like each other. She's getting it from both sides, so she's getting it from her people and getting it from the white folks who didn't want her to do what she did. So all this stuff, all this info was coming. It's a super interesting story.
I could just watch a story about her.
Yeah, we actually were gonna do a series about her. Then some things happened, some legal issues. Yeah, we had to abandon that project. So, but I had written a pilot about her, and it was awesome. Wow. And I won a bunch of contests with it. And I actually went to the hip hop film festival a couple years ago in Harlem, and it was one of the finalists. I didn't win, but right afterwards, executives ran up on me about it. And they were like, yo, "What's your phone number? Give us your card." Blah blah. I want to read. I want to read the whole pilot. And da, 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 da. So it was like a big thing.
It's huge.
Yeah.
That is so exciting.
And unfortunately we weren't able to continue with it because of legal things, and I was so mad. But
Yeah. Everything happens for a reason.
Everything happens for a reason.
And maybe one day.
Never know. We never know. No.
Oh my gosh. So, I saw where you have, okay, hold on. I want to talk about 2 more things.
Sure.
First, I want to talk about how your filmmaking and your love of arts, how does that translate into you as being a teacher and an English language arts teacher? Or does it translate?
Mm-hmm.
How?
Yeah. My love of film is also a love of history, which is also a love of language, which is also a love of words. So it all goes together. I expose my kids to, films that help them enhance their learning experience. My last class that we did, we studied the World War I. And so I showed them the film 1917, which is about 2 British soldiers who had to go to the front line and deliver a message. And the key thing about this film is that it's shot in one take. So the camera follows the characters, well, seemingly one take. The camera follows the characters through everything, it doesn't turn away.
Oh.
And they didn't notice that earlier, like, wow, that is interesting. And so we started talking about filmmaking techniques and how sound is used, how camera angles are used to enhance the experience of you watching this film and everything. So I incorporate that in there, and they gather a lot of that. They were very interested in that, how this is made and how the history behind everything, World War I history, and how we got into World War I and what the country was like and what was going on and all that. And so I incorporate all of that, in a way that they can understand. And so I bring all those elements into the classroom to teach.
I think that's really cool, and it definitely makes learning, fun, but also practical in the sense of I think when I was going to school, we learned these subjects, but we didn't really learn how they could put into use into a career, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have an English teacher, teach me English in such a way where it was taught where I could be oh, I can write scripts or do all of these different fun careers outside of teaching English, right?
Right.
And so that seems to me like a project where students are learning the subject, but also learning how the subject goes into a career and how it's used.
I do that. And so early on, I would poll the room and I'd say, okay, what do you want to do when you grow up? And someone would say, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer, and things like that. And so I would have discussions with them often during our advisory time, okay, you want to be a lawyer. So reading is very important. Researching is very important. Okay, you're going to be researching briefs. You're going to research other prior cases, so-and-so versus so-and-so. And you're going to have to draft the brief and all these things. So writing is important. Reading is important. Research is important. Being able to find information and distill information into short form to be able to give back to people. You want to be a doctor, that again, you got the memorization, memorize body parts, be able to read Latin and all this other stuff. Engineers, your math is going to be important, so you have to really get your math scores up. So we would talk about, okay, these are your math scores right now. I need to get that up because then when you get to high school, you're going to have to look at algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and things you're going to have to use in engineering. So I try to identify early what people are doing and kind of tell them, okay, this is what I need you to work on and beef up on when you get to high school.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as a teacher, so my dissertation was actually about teacher activism because I definitely feel like teaching is political. It can be very political.
Yeah.
You can definitely use the classroom to organize students around a certain cause. And that's why we're seeing so much legislation around teachers and around what you can teach because they know that y'all are political and you can, not indoctrinate, but basically through learning, you open your eyes, you open your students' eyes up to things and mean, children are creative, right? So now we've got to like pigeonhole what y'all learn.
So and that's the key word. It's not indoctrination; it's illumination. So it's opening their minds up to things. And thank God, I work at Legacy Charter School, so it's a Black-owned school, and we're not part of TPS, so we don't have to adhere to whatever they talking about over there. So we Black all day, every day, 24/7, and we teach Black stuff, and and we don't have anybody worried about CRT in our school because I'm gonna teach it. Mm-hmm. So the last subject I taught before we left for the summer was about Claudette Colvin.
I got to meet her.
Wow.
Yes.
I wish I did.
Yes. We got to meet her through my fellowship, and she spoke to us just about what it was like to sit on that bus. I didn't even know, not to hijack, I want you to finish, but she didn't even I didn't know that she received such backlash.
Yes. She was 15 years old, and then she got pregnant.
Yeah.
In the 50s.
Yeah.
So that was a double no-no.
And she was dark skinned.
She was dark skinned. She didn't fit the aesthetic
of
what they wanted, like Rosa Parks did.
Right.
Which that whole thing made me side-eye a lot of stuff in the civil rights movement. I was like, at the end of the book, I was like,
yeah. Oh, we can talk about it if you want to.
It's like, so.
Yeah.
And she knew Rosa.
Yeah.
Rosa was a friend of hers. And y'all threw that little girl to the wolves. And let her be persecuted. And then y'all turn around and purposely did what she did. Because you were fair skinned and you were married and you had good hair.
The whole respectability
thing. Politics. And then so they put her out as the forefront of the civil rights movement and not this little Black girl. But it was her testimony that desegregated the buses, not Rosa's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But she never got credit.
Which is something you don't even learn, right? Like how few people know the name Claudette Colvin and know that it was her testimony that desegregated buses, yet Rosa Parks is who we celebrate.
Who's the godmother of
civil rights movement. And then just my thing about it is the civil rights movement was heavily patriarchal. Women were doing all this stuff behind the scenes.
It's colorism, it's sexist.
Sexist, the sexual abuse that some women faced at the hands of these civil rights. Too. Yeah. And they just threw her out to the wolves and her community shunned her. And I mean, listening to her talk, and we were just thank you. She was very grateful to receive her flowers now.
Yes.
Even though she's in her 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Civil rights history is.
My kids were like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
We always thought that it was I said, oh, bro, I thought it was that way until I read the book. And because I read everything before them. So I'm reading the book
yeah.
What? I didn't even know this story. What? So I'm on the internet looking up stuff. I said, y'all lying. I said, I can't believe this.
Yeah.
So I was hot after I read the book, and so I'll start teaching my kids this stuff, and teaching them about Plessy versus Ferguson, Brown versus Board of Education, and just teaching them about history and everything. And they're like, well, what are we gonna learn? I said, well, this is the biggest thing. And the old folks used to tell us, if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. And you guys are in a prime position right now where you have information at your fingertips. You have the internet, you have one another, and you're very vocal about the things that you're passionate about. Whether it's clothes or whether it's music, whether it's art or whatever. But also make sure you know that you're Black. And you have to be vocal about a lot of things there too. And things are going to happen to you. You're going to see things happen to people that look like you that you don't agree with. And knowing the law of the land, like Claudette did. Claudette knew her rights. When they were dragging her off the bus, she said, I know it's my constitutional right. Mm-hmm. And it was. It was her constitutional right to sit on that bus. And you have to know your rights when you face crooked police or crooked politicians and things like that, to know the law and know your rights as Black people and citizens of this country is important. And you guys need to know these things because we're not going to be here. Mm-hmm. I said, Mr. Byrd's 50. I'm not going to be here forever. Mm-hmm. I'll be gone. Mm-hmm. And then it's you. Yeah. Don't let it end with you. Yeah. So, yeah, I try to tell them, use your art, use your mind, use everything to speak out. And that was why I went to teach in the first place. They don't show one for the money. So Definitely go in for the money because I was making good money before I started teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, man, I'm getting older. I can't go to all the marches. I can't donate to all the causes. I can't do all the foot soldiering and all that stuff. What I can do is I can get in the classroom and this old man can impart what he knows to young people and mold their minds and show them a different way and show them how the world works for them and make them better people.
Yeah.
And that's my way of giving back.
Well, one thing you said was like, I can't be out there foot soldiering, but what you can do is create other little foot soldiers through your teaching.
Exactly.
And I think that is just remarkable.
Exactly.
And I love teachers. I love teachers. I love educators. I think my dad was a teacher for 40 plus years.
Oh, wow.
My whole family's in education.
Oh, wow.
And being a former K-12 teacher, bless y'all. Because the patience y'all have, it's not for the weak.
We don't have it actually. No,
it's not for the weak.
You have no patience, but it's hard, yes.
Yeah, it is. It's hard, but it's so meaningful.
Yes.
And I think that, like you said, like you might not be out there protesting every day, but what you're doing to young minds and molding young minds, it's just as important as being on the front line.
And that's
of
why
any
I
protest.
feel. That's why I feel it's just as important, to get this next generation ready, because I think there was such, when President Obama got elected, I think there was such a disconnect between the old school civil rights folks and Obama's in that generation. It was I don't think that gap was ever bridged.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of murmur and chatter from Jesse and all these other people who were saying things about him, and Tab and Smiley's and all these other people out here who were saying things about him, and I don't think that gap ever got closed. I don't think there was ever a meeting of the minds there to carry on what they were trying to do. And I think this is a good time for us to really reach out to these young folks as older people or elder statesmen or whatever you want to call us, and bridge that gap with them. Yeah. Their music is different than ours. Their dress is different than ours. Their vernacular is different than ours. But in the classroom, I try to find that common ground with them. And they surprise me, and I surprise them. About the Mr. I know you listen to that. And I say I listen to everything.
Right. I
watch everything. Mm-hmm. Hopefully I don't dress like a too old man. It's me. You got a little style, Mr. Byrd. I try not to dress like an old man.
Right.
Even though I am one, but
Right. You still got swag.
I got a little bit. I try to have a little bit. But yeah.
So just from Facebook, I see that you're making a horror now. Yeah,
I'm working on. I wrote a horror pilot actually called The Fae, and it's gotten a lot of attention.
Is this a series or
a series?
Short film? Okay.
Series, yeah, it's a series I wrote. So it's a story about four female veterans, military veterans. They meet at a PTSD support group, and one of them has a substance abuse problem, and she, is hospitalized, and they're taking her kids away. And so one of them decides to try to get some money. So they rob a bank. And so it kind of has a set it off feel. And the feds are after them, and they wind up robbing a bank in Kentucky. Mm-hmm. So what they do, they hit little small towns where there's not a lot of resistance, and they rob little banks. So they're in Kentucky, and the feds got a drop on them. And they wind up car shot up and everything. And so plan B is to hike it through the Appalachian Forest to an airfield and get away to Mexico. So they jump out, get their stuff on. One of them's injured, shot in the stomach, and they hike their way through the forest with the feds on their tail. So again, I'm a researcher. And if you read anything about the Appalachian Forest is a very mysterious place. And there are themes or legends in the Appalachian Forest. So the feds and bank robbers run into something in the woods.
When does it release?
Whenever somebody buys it, it makes it, you know. But yeah, they have to kind of join forces to survive the things in the woods, and
Oh wow!
and so that becomes a series, and they discover that they've stumbled into a realm that they didn't know about, and so again, researching the Appalachian Forest, it scared me, and I'm not even scared. It's some creepy stuff out there.
I gotta look it up now.
Look up the Appalachian Forest and just the legends in the Appalachian Forest. It's like a lot, because what happened is that, you know, Europeans came over here, and they literally brought their gods and their legends and their monsters with them, and when they stepped away from society and started their own things in the woods. Wow. And really nobody really knew what they got up to out there, what they were worshiping, what they brought with them, what you know, people lost touch with them.
Wow.
So, you know, the Appalachian Forest is dense, it's deep, it's dark, it's you know, it's very covered. You know, you get out there, cell phones don't work. There are cave systems that run on for miles that you don't even know about. They're still discovering cave systems, discovering whatever's in the cave systems, whatever is in the woods and things like that. People going out there, never been heard from again. People heard noises that they can't identify. People have seen things that they can't recognize. And this is real stuff.
Hank, oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I took all of that I learned and like put it into a series. You know, so it's action, horror, whatever. So yeah, we made the cover fly red list, which is, you know, your top writers in the red list. So I made it to the top 10% of writers.
That's amazing.
Yeah, top 10% out of like 17,000 writers. I made the top 10%, which puts us on the red list. And so once you make the red list, that can kind of open some doors for you and things like that. So, you know, I actually got an agent. So I got lucky, got an agent. You know, my agent Philip.
Congratulations.
In LA, thank you. And so he's taking all my stuff now and just shopping it, you know, to different people.
Oh my gosh.
All that stuff. So yeah. So,
hey, that is exciting.
It is. It's a process though, you know. It's still, we haven't sold anything yet, but it's, you know, we're prayerful that things are gonna turn around and work. So I worked hard to get that. To get an agent ain't easy.
Yeah.
You know, and so to get one is a blessing.
That's exciting. That pilot will get picked up, and I will faithfully tune in every week, because that sounds really interesting. And now I'm gonna like scare myself tonight and look up these legends of the Appalachian Forest.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of them.
Let's just end with this. So right now, Tulsa's kind of, I don't even want to say they're going through this renaissance. They've always kind of gone through this renaissance, right? Like even working with Eddie Pigate's collection, I'm learning like the history of musicians has always been here. Musicians passing through Tulsa who, you know, have done big things because of their time in Tulsa. And so to say that Tulsa is going through this renaissance right now would be inaccurate. I think what it would be more accurate is like Tulsa has been going through this renaissance for decades. I think the difference now is that people are maybe recognizing and giving credit where credit is due. Which is why we're seeing Tulsa on the map more.
Yes.
But what are your thoughts about like how Tulsa seems to just breed this artistic energy? And right now, I mean, the art scene in Tulsa is just insane, from music to film to poetry to just like visual art. It's booming. So what are your thoughts about?
I think it's great. I think it's exceptional. You know, my first job as a filmmaker or videographer was to film local music artists. That's what I did when I first got my camera. That's what I would do for money. So, you know, Brand J, Star Fisher, Austin King, who's moved away from here. Brandy Hamilton, Faith Moffitt now, all kind of artists here, hip hop, Charlie Red, Full Flavor Kings. I would film for everybody, and so that's how I got my start. That's how I got known, you know, quote unquote, was through the Tulsa music scene. And so I would go and film their shows and do their EPKs and stuff like that for them to get more gigs. And I just discovered all these just this immense talent that we have here in Tulsa. And it was always a shame that I was like, God, these people are like legends, man. Like now, you know what I'm saying? In hip hop, all that R&B, alternative, whatever you want to call it. There's so many great artists here that the world needs to see. And so I think the internet definitely opened that up more for people. Social media opened that up more of people to recognize these artists who are already here. And they're just doing what they normally do. You know, people come from out of town and they see these guys perform and they're like, oh my God, these guys are talented, and it's just another Saturday for us.
Right.
You know, we see them all the time. But, you know, I'm glad that, you know, the tourism of Greenwood and Tulsa is picked up, you know, to allow people to see that and allow people to film, you know, take pictures and film it and show their friends and let everybody know these things are going on. And I hope that continues, you know, because we have immense talent here, and these artists deserve the same treatment as the artists in a bigger market, you know, in New York or California or anywhere else. You know, they deserve the same treatment and pay and respect, because, you know, we're kind of isolated from everybody. We're in Oklahoma, you know, we're not in a big market like a Dallas or, you know, or LA or something like that. So again, we make art out of necessity.
Right.
You know, we don't have the access to the things other people have or the market other people have. So we work just that much harder to stand out.
Yeah.
You know, everybody wants to think they can just, you know, they want to jump up and I'm gonna move to LA and I'm gonna move to California, I'm gonna move to New York or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you're moving into a much bigger ocean where, you know, if you can make a splash in your own pond, it'll serve you better. I could have moved to LA.
Right.
Easily. Could have taken a job in LA and moved out there and been a filmmaker, but I want to see Oklahoma, you know, film community, the Black Oklahoma film community.
Yeah. I
want to see that here, you know, and it's possible because I'm doing it.
Yeah.
You know, as far as I know, there are no other Tulsa filmmakers that have a show on Tubi.
No. So
we made history with that.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, it's right for all of us in music, film, everything to really stand out and from Oklahoma, because people see my show and we got a soundtrack too, and people hear the soundtrack and they're like, where is all these people from? And all the artists on my soundtrack are Tulsa, they lived here in Tulsa or from Tulsa.
Yeah.
Really? Y'all shot that in Tulsa? Where? Tulsa, Oklahoma.
People sleep on Oklahoma.
People
I don't know if they think we're like dumb or I don't know. Country, just because even with the fellowship that I am a part of, the lady straight up told me, like, I'm so glad we went with someone from Oklahoma. And I'm like, why would you not? Like, right. What?
Right.
But it resonated with me because I'm like, y'all underestimate our capabilities just because of where we are geographically. But like, people in Oklahoma are doing things.
Yes.
And even the history, I'm like, Ralph Ellison. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's an Oklahoman. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So we have such a Charlie Wilson, who just got a star on the Walk of Fame. Mm-hmm. So it's like, we have people here who have been, like, think about the people who are of Oklahoma.
Alfred Woodard, Cornel West, all these people from
even
Tulsa.
like Jay Ellis from Insecure.
With Booker T.
Yeah. So I'm like, y'all gotta stop sleeping on Oklahoma.
I saw him at ABFF 3 years ago. I was shooting the red carpet for Insecure. And I said, 918. He said, who said that?
See?
And I was like, man, he's what's up, man? And yeah. So he really embraces his Tulsa roots, you know.
He definitely reps Tulsa. And to that end, what you just said about making a splash, like look at Brand J and what she's doing in New York. Mm-hmm. Like she's taking it by storm.
Yes, she should.
They love her. So it's just kind of, I think that's a testimony that like we're doing things here in Oklahoma.
Yes.
And y'all need to like get on board before it's too late. You know what I'm saying? Like, and just what are your thoughts? I mean, and one thing about beyond just the arts that are here, but it's like how you guys are using your art to serve the community. I mean, you've talked immensely about being a filmmaker and feeling that need. And Brand J's music is so like feel good, spirited music. And I think, you know, like we have the Fire in Little Africa album, what that's doing. We have, you know, the exhibits and the art that we see addressing, you know, the climate here in Tulsa. So what can you say about like how Tulsa artists are really using their art to speak to the climate that's happening, that's around us right now?
I mean, this is a historic place. How can you not? That's a thing. We're historic Greenwood. We're descendants of that. You know, our families are part of that. So being cognizant of the spirit of Greenwood, the spirit of entrepreneurship, the spirit of artistry, craftsmanship, you know, though that's in us. As Oklahomans, that's in us, you know, and everything. You know, my mother's son, my roots in Oklahoma come from my mom. She's from here. You know, my mom's a country girl. She's from Haskell, Oklahoma. But, you know, I learned about Greenwood early. I remember, you know, being 18, 19, and for a birthday gift, my mother brought me the book Writing in Remembrance. That was a book about the Greenwood massacre that I knew nothing about. She did. And she was like, I want you to read this book. When I was 18. And so I learned about it, you know, early. You know, some people 50, 60 years old didn't even know about it. You know, so that became part of me as an artist. It's just to, you know, be cognizant of who I am as a Black person and how I can put that into my art. You know, I have parents who are very, you know, civic minded, parents who are very history minded, you know, and everything about being Black and, you know, and carrying ourselves to a higher standard and everything. And a work ethic that was put into me by my parents. And so I carried that into my art. And the biggest thing that I was always taught, you know, because I didn't have a lot of mentors when I started. You know what I'm saying? And when I didn't have no Spike Lees laying around or people like that to help me become a filmmaker. I learned a lot of it on my own. But then I developed mentors later. You know, I have my little tribe and community of artists that I fool with now. But somebody said to me, you know, be what you never didn't have. And so when I started making film, part of what I do is, you know, one, I try to make sure that I have people of color in my cast and crew. You know, bLERDS is all people of color. Every, you know, writers, actors, crew people, all Black. And what they didn't know, I taught them. That's how you build a film community. That's how you know, pass that on. You know, you teach people how to write, you teach people how to produce, you teach people how to do lights and cameras and all that stuff. Because like I said, I didn't know how to do that stuff when I started. I learned, I was taught that, you know, so I can pass that down to other people, and that way we build film community. We build those things, and they can go off do their own projects. And then we're building a community here of filmmakers. Yeah. And we're telling Black stories, you know, the way we want to tell them. And so, and we put out we start talking about issues and everything like that. And filmmakers around me have done that, and I do it, you know. So we're slowly but surely building that film community, and we're partnering with Circle Cinema and other people, you know, to help us with that thing. We have some allies out there that really are wanting to partner with us to do things, bigger and better things for filmmakers of color who just don't have the resources that other people have. You know, grants and things like that they don't have to create and tell stories with their own voices, because that's for so long that's been the problem with Hollywood. You know, we letting other people tell our stories. Yeah. And that's why we get some of the films that we get that don't really faithfully represent us. Yeah. You know, and one day somebody, because, you know, it's been people like 5 or 6 people have tried to, one day somebody's gonna do the Greenwood movie. And because many people have tried, but for some reason, you know, the story just doesn't happen. Yeah. You know, Oprah's been behind one, John Legend, Tim Story. There's been like 4 or 5 people who started on one and then it just didn't happen for whatever reason or another. You know, and it's a story. But you know, Watchmen did it, and Lovecraft Country did it. You know, they went there.
Yeah. I think Lovecraft Countries was my favorite.
Same.
I remember watching it for the first time, seeing that episode and being like, dang, but it hit different once I moved to Tulsa.
Mm-hmm.
And where I live, I can look out my window and see the Tulsa Theater where they,
Dreamland.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so then to rewatch it, I was in tears rewatching it. It hit different living in Tulsa. Like,
it did, yeah.
Yeah.
It was. I cried the whole episode, and I was like, they went there.
Yeah.
They went there with that, and but as HBO, they're more of a
production.
They're more like forward thinking, but like Hollywood, we can tell the story, or some rich black people with some money, we can tell the story.
Yeah.
Outside of Hollywood, which would probably be preferable, but I digress. But
well,
yeah,
that would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
Preferably a Tulsan or a descendant.
Yes.
Well.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add before we wrap up here? Any
No.
lasting thoughts?
No, I just, I'm glad to see Tulsa really being recognized more on the world stage, and the artists that come with that. I'm glad to see them branching out and doing bigger things, and I'm just happy to be a part of that.
Yeah. Well, I will look forward to the rest of bLERDS season 1
Mm-hmm.
On Tubi television. But thanks so much, Hank, for taking time out of your day, out of your summer break, to speak with us today. And thank you so much.
Thank you.